Welcome to another episode of Relationship Smart Women podcast. I'm Nicole Matheson, and I just felt like sharing something that's going on for me right now. I've been feeling the mental load really heavily lately, and I just wanted to share that with you. So, I don't know if you know this term, the mental load, but basically it is that load that often women carry in their family life, probably more so when there are children involved, and more so of a certain generation. I do feel like you young things are doing this a bit better than those of us who kind of set up our systems, our family systems, based on older historical models. So the mental load is that load that we carry of always thinking about managing the family, the home, the groceries, the chores, the load. And often it can be that our partners do share certain tasks or help in inverted commas. But the problem is that we carry the load of thinking about it. The very idea that they are helping us shows that it's our load. And our responsibility in the end. So things like getting dinner on the table, what's in the fridge, in the freezer, in the cupboards, loads of washing, managing the kids' schedules, getting to school, getting their lunches ready, meeting with teachers. Can be things like paying bills, getting the house maintained, all sorts of little jobs. And what can happen with the mental load is it can build up and build up in the form of resentment and then explode in something that feels like anger. Yeah, or of just fuming resentment, which is not great in your relationships with your partner, with your family, with your kids. So I just wanted to share what's been going on for me. I've been feeling the mental load, and I suppose there are moments when it's all fine and you can just carry it, and it's cruising along, and yes, you're busy, and yes, you're doing lots, but it feels like not too much of a heavy load on your shoulders, and I think that's been the case for me for a while. But then the last week or so, I've been not unwell, but lacking in energy. And I suppose in those moments when you're not firing on all cylinders, it becomes really obvious at times that this is not a sustainable load to be carrying. And that's kind of what happened to me. And it's things like just other people's expectations that you'll do things effortlessly. So that kind of tripped me over the edge. It's like, no. They kind of look at you like, oh, mum will be able to handle that, and mum will be onto that soon, or she'll have it sorted. And all of a sudden you're like, nah, I am not handling that effortlessly. In fact, you can do it. So I kind of had a weekend where I was unapologetically grumpy. And and I think that's really healthy actually sometimes, to be unapologetically grumpy about the load and to share that that it's not that they don't help when they're asked. So my family do, help. I've got a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old, and my husband, of course. And my kids are actually, they're quite helpful. And so when I say, can you empty the dishwasher? Can you put a load of washing on? Can you hang out the washing? I might have to ask a few times, but they do it. They'll help. But it's still my load. I'm still asking for help. No one else has the responsibility of making sure everything flows smoothly. And for some people, I think that works well, right? Like it's sometimes it's good to have one person managing, like in a business type thing. It's like, I'll manage everything and what's the word? Deal out the jobs and make sure it all runs smoothly. But I just don't want to have to think all the time about all the things. I want to be able to fully relax. And I feel like the mental load stops us from really being able to soften and relax and just be still and safe and comfortable in our own skin. So yeah, I've now passed on certain jobs as other people's responsibility. So what that means for me is I don't have to remind you, I don't have to tell you to do the job, I don't have to notice when it needs to be done. That is entirely your responsibility. So things like taking out bins, that's your job. If it gets to this point, it means you've left it too long and you really need to act. Or feeding the dog, like if you don't do your job, the dog will starve and die. Like, do your job. Obviously I keep a little eye on that one, but it's not my responsibility to remind you. It's your job. So that's where we're at. And obviously my kids are at a certain age where they're ready for actual responsibility, like to take on that. And they've been ready for that for many years, probably. And they have had chores for a long time. But I suppose what I want to communicate is that it's okay for you to not cope if you are feeling this too much, for you to not do everything effortlessly. It's actually good to share that rather than just wearing it, just sucking it up, just soldiering on and then exploding in anger and resentment further down the track. So basically, the mental load is yours to decide what feels right. And that means it needs boundaries. You need to bring in some boundaries of, this is as much as I am capable and willing to do in order to be sustainable. And you're just going to have to pick up the rest. So if if your partner was living alone, they would manage. They would find ways. And that's kind of nice to remember, right? Because if you weren't there picking up all these pieces, they would find a way. So therefore, there is some scope for maneuverability. And this is an important piece of your relationship with your partner and your relationship with your children, if you have them, so that you can enjoy each other, so that you can have some sense of spaciousness there to actually relax, to enjoy each other, to have fun, to have space, to not feel all that pressure and overwhelm. Okay, so my top tip to you around the mental load is to not always feel like you have to cope amazingly, to show that you are struggling with the load, and to share that load out, to share out responsibilities. And yeah, I've got a couple of other ideas that I've jotted down. So my idea number one is kind of the same as that. It's like, don't always feel like you have to make it look easy and effortless. Show that you need space and time. Show that you need downtime. Show that you need help. Ask for help, but also share out that load. We have a system for washing up in our house called the PEG system. I reckon you can start this system really young and just make it part of the woodwork of your family structure. And the PEG system is basically everyone's name on a peg, and whoever's peg is at the bottom, and we've got them hanging on a string next to the sink. Whoever's peg is at the bottom has to do washing up and cleaning up after dinner. And then they get to put their peg to the top until it comes round again. And that's been working really well at our house because there's no questions asked. It's just like, no, it's your job. And this idea came from a friend who used to live in a share house, and they used it in their share house. And the idea was that everyone else just left the washing up until they did it. So I have actually threatened that with our kids that, yeah, well, if you don't do it now, it just keeps building up after breakfast in the morning or for the whole next day until you actually do it. So you're better off just jumping in and doing it now. The other thing we do here is the kids do cook meals. Once a week I have one child cooking, and that just rotates. And I think that's really important to help them become more independent and ready to move out and live on their own eventually. Some other things that help me are getting my groceries delivered. Some of the big supermarket chains here, Woolworths and Coles, they do that. They have online orders. I think once you've ordered a couple of times and you saved your lists, it becomes really easy to just click on all the usual things you buy. The trick there is to try and avoid plastics. I don't get my fruit and veg because they wrap everything in plastic. And I don't get my meat either that way, but that's just a personal choice. Other things that have helped with the load are those meal delivery services like HelloFresh or Dinnerly. They do take the pressure off because the ingredients are all there, the recipe's there, you don't have to think. And I find that's really easy for the kids to actually follow those recipes and cook. But again, have to worry about packaging a little. I like to sort of also make things like going and getting veggies or whatever a bit of fun. So I might meet a friend for coffee and go to the markets, or I walk the dog to the markets and get my husband to pick me up from the markets. things like dinner picnics, make that fun. Like take some salad and some chicken and some wraps down to the dam and have a swim and have dinner there, just to make it more, less kind of tedious and chore-like and more fun. I would love to hear your ideas on how to ease the load, ease the mental load, and involve the family and just create some space and ease. I know that some people are really going to be on one end of the extreme of sharing out that load, and other people will be right down at the other end of the spectrum and maybe doing everything and feeling like that's what makes a good wife and a good mother. But often we are also very busy working. We're managing important jobs, or trying to make ends meet, or even if we're not working, we're volunteering, or we're just busy, right? And I think it's a lot. I just want to say, I see you and I feel you, honey. It's tough and it's hard, and it can start to wear away at the good feeling, particularly in relation to those really important relationships, those intimate relationships with your partner and your children. And I think we have to be smart and take responsibility. On the weekend when I was feeling grumpy, I was also very aware that it was my lack of boundaries and my lack of showing that this was hard, and my lack of asking for systems to be in place, that was the problem. Like, if I'm just always going to do stuff for my family and always going to make it look easy and always going to be available, and I'm never ever asking for anyone else to show up, then that's on me. That is not their, like, I can't really be all that angry at them for taking advantage of that. They're not even taking advantage. They're just, like, that's just the norm that I've allowed them to accept and expect. And so I have to be the one who is empowered here and ask for what I need. Just like any other area of my relationships, I have to take responsibility first. And I have really felt the load so heavily in the past that it has made me, it's buried my sense of love and affection for members of my family, and I think that's really dangerous, like resentment to build so much that we're not even in touch with our love. So I suppose I just want to inspire you to put systems in place that allow you the connection to that love and affection, that allow you to not run all the stories of woe, of I'm not supported, of they don't give a shit about me, they're just milking me for all that I do for them, or whatever it is that those stories that resentment can create. Those stories are just there to try and protect you, and that if those stories are running, then it is time for some boundaries around this. It is time for standing up and setting up some new systems of putting your hand up and saying, I'm not coping, and I can see that if I continue to do everything here, I'm going to get burnt out, cranky, and extremely angry, and I'm just going to explode one day. And you probably won't see it coming because you'll think I'm just cruising through here, but it's coming. So if we don't change things now, there's going to be a big problem in the future, you know? Okay. Well, yes, like I said, I'd love to hear about how you're coping with the mental load. And we haven't even started on the emotional load or the beauty load, which is the book that I've written. So let's just keep it to the mental load just now. Although they do cross over, all of them. And yeah, please share how you're coping with that. I would love to hear. Thanks for listening. Good luck sorting out your load. Bye. Turns out I'm not quite finished talking about the mental load. I just wanted to say that anything to do with feeling resentful and needing new boundaries and finding new ways to feel sustainable and empowered is going to be a work in progress. So I just wanted to say this is in constant flux and change, and you're constantly realizing that's not quite it, this is what I need, and needing to change it. And that is just the nature of relationships. The nature of relationships is a constant relationship with finding your alignment and finding what works for you. So I just wanted to add that piece. And I also wanted to add that I have my workshop on resentment. So if you are feeling filled to the brim with resentment and feel like actually the first step to coping with the mental load might be just to clear off some of that build up, then I've got you covered. Go to NicoleMatheson.com/shop and you'll find my resentment program, my resentment workshop there. It's a deep dive into how to clear out resentment and stop it from building up in the future. Anyway, my loves, take care. Bye.